Today I'm with Daryl Synstelien from Synstelien Community Services, and I'm so glad to have you here and to learn about your small business today, Daryl. So tell me, how did you get started, and what is it that you do exactly?
What we do is we provide residential care and services for adults with developmental disabilities. How we got started was from doing family foster care in our home, and we wanted to be able to impact a greater number of lives, and we did that by really duplicating ourselves in training qualified staff to provide that care in other homes.
Okay, and how long ago did you start this?
1996, we first began to provide services here in Fergus Falls.
Okay, so we're talking like 15 years. And was it just you and your wife when you first started?
It was just Linda and myself.
Okay, and how many employees do you have now, or how many group home sites are there?
Right now we are operating 7 group home sites, and we have about 65 employees.
Oh my goodness, that is amazing growth. So tell me, how did you go from like the baby steps of starting to evolving into something that employs 65 people?
Well, our steps primarily came about by meeting needs. When needs were identified, we looked at the opportunity, we looked at the risks that were involved, and decided to take one step forward in order to meet those needs as the opportunities arise.
So, Daryl, like when it was just you and Linda at first, when did you hire your first employee?
Our first employee would have been hired about 2.5 years after we started. We had services that were provided through the service agreements that we had with the counties, but there were always other agencies' employees. A couple of years after we started, we hired our first employees and began to train and introduce them to our employment.
Okay, and how long, like in the first year, 2, 3, 4, 5, how did you grow? Did you grow like there was just one place, and then did it exponentially jump to 7, or?
One home at a time. Our business is rather unique in that each service site has really only 4 clients that live in each site. And so we're either at 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100% capacity. And so we had to focus our energies and investment on meeting the needs in that home first, stabilizing the services before we're looking on to grow other homes.
Okay. So how do you get the facilities to do this? Are they in actual homes, or are they commercial properties, or?
Residential settings, a home just like you or I would live in every neighborhood. The whole impact and focus of our services is integration within the community. They're a neighbor of you, a neighbor of mine, that are operating in the city, in our community, in the same way that you or I would.
Okay. And so did you have to continually buy homes? Was there this financial investment each time?
There's an incredible financial investment in opening up each group home. The house has to be purchased just like any family would open and purchase and begin a home. And so there's a mortgage involved, there's insurance involved, there's modifications that sometimes have to be made in order to meet the physical and disability needs of each client.
So you really had started like in your own home, and then though to advance and grow this business, you had to go out and buy other properties and run the numbers to make sure that this would work?
That's correct. The first 12 years of our business, we actually shared our home. We lived in the basement of our home while our first 4 clients lived in the upstairs of our home. It was very much up and down duplex.
Okay. What do you know now, having done, is it 4 or 7 of them? 7 of them. What did you learn from those baby steps that allowed you to grow to something that has now 7 properties?
Oh, there's so many things you learn. One of the largest things we learned is not to bite off more than we can chew, not to grow beyond our capacity to proficiently meet the needs and address the concerns that we have.
When you say that, do you mean grow beyond the capacity in terms of your employees, their training, or their skill, or the market, or?
All of the above. You have to make sure your employees are trained and capable, skilled to provide the services that are needed in each home. And each home is different because each person is different. At the same time, you have the financial capacity, you have the cash flow in order to meet payroll, to have sufficient amount of funds in capital accounts available for hard times, unexpected needs, unexpected emergencies. You don't want to get too extended, or you put your employees at risk, you put your services at risk.
You sound like you have a pretty good grasp of the numbers, Daryl. How did you learn that? Do you have a degree in business, or how did that happen?
My biggest degree is in the School of Hard Knocks. By making mistakes, you learn what hurts, and you don't do it again. And then you learn what works, and you repeat it.
Okay. So tell me, when you are setting about deciding, could we open home number 8, what kind of financial analysis do you do at that point?
Well, we project our cash flow. We look at the market, what the possible services we could be providing, what the income from those services would be, and we look at our expenditures. What's the staffing costs? What are the modifications? What's the mortgage going to be? What are the insurance costs? An almost endless number of expenditures that will be encountered. We need to consider all of that, look at our cash flow, profit analysis, and decide whether or not it's worth the risk.
So could you learn how to do that from the School of Hard Knocks, how to put the numbers on the paper and run them and make it come out?
I believe anybody could learn that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with you, too. I think anybody can learn that. When you first went from your home to home number 2, I imagine you had to go to the bank. What was the banker's reaction at first to this idea of a business?
Healthy skepticism. Prove to me that this will work. Put it on paper, and it's a wonderful exercise to make sure you can take what is believable and what you envision here and put it on paper so that it cash flows, so that it makes sense to others. It's very important.
Does the banker look at you more favorably now after 7 successful group homes?
No question about it. We've got a wonderful relationship with our bank.
Isn't that true? That's great. So tell me about your employees. What kind of skill sets do they have, and what's their background usually?
Most important thing about our employees is that they're the best people in the world. Not only are they dependable, they're skilled in the services that they provide. A new employee can come to us with very little technical training. We actually are mandated by the state of Minnesota to provide the specific skills necessary for the clients that they will be serving on a day-to-day basis. So we do a tremendous amount of in-house training in all of the skills necessary for care. A huge amount of our time is spent in continuous education and annual retraining, orientation from the initial employment period, and it's an ongoing process.
Are you dealing with a lot of government regulation in this kind of industry?
Endless. Yes. Government regulation, and I would take a kind of a twofold approach. On the one hand, the government regulation in our case has a lot to do with caring for vulnerable individuals. So the regulations that we must follow are there for the protection of the people we serve. That's very important. I wouldn't minimize the value of that. On the other hand, that also makes running a business very challenging. You have business regulations in addition to the health and human service regulations. And so both of them are challenging. Both of them serve a necessary function. But the regulations can be challenging and costly for a business to be in compliance with.
Do you see that it would be difficult, and I'm not promoting competition for your business, but do compliance with regulations, does that make it challenging for people to enter your field?
It does. It's somewhat daunting. There's a lot of information you have to require, a lot of things you need to know and maintain continuous evaluation of, and just to ensure you're remaining in compliance with numerous areas.
Do you have to have some staff that are just geared towards compliance issues?
We have several administrative staff. That's all they do. All they do are make sure that we stay on top of our safety issues. We stay on top of our reporting concerns. We are continuously watching the mandated outcomes and opportunities that we provide for our clients and reporting them to interdisciplinary teams.
So, Daryl, when you first started with your first group home, did that make enough money to pay your bills, put food on the table? How long did it take you to get on your feet with your business?
You know, it really took 5 years before we saw a profit that we could live on, that would actually pay our mortgage, that would actually pay for the food on our table. Certainly we had incremental growth. But really it took about 5 years for us to feel that we could depend on the income from our business just to live.
So what did you do during that time while you were waiting for this business to do this?
We ran another business. This was our second business adventure. Our first business was profitable, was stable, was in a period of plateaued growth. We weren't growing it any further, so that led us to the opportunity to invest in this as a second business.
So you were working one business, which was?
I'm a jeweler by trade. I retired from the jewelry industry in 2001, and I created custom design pieces for stores and individuals across the country.
Okay, so you kept doing this while you were waiting for your group home business to get enough legs under it to pay the bills and support your family.
That was my night job. We provided our cares. We ran our caregiving business during the day, Monday through Sunday. And after hours, when everything was quiet, everything was settled down, all that business was accomplished, I would go to my shop and I would work the second business, and that paid the bills.
So you were kind of doing double time on this to get this started. So there wasn't just an immediate amount of cash that you decided, I'm going to get this group home business going, and there it was, and it magically appeared, and it was 5 years of working two jobs.
That's why it's so critically important not to just start a business because of what you think, how much money it'll make. Because it's very likely that in the first few years, there will not be a dime of profit. Sometimes you're very fortunate. But the truth is that business takes a while to build. And before there's anything that'll be available for you to live off of, you may need to do another job, run a different business that you've already been successful at, and it may take time to transition.
So while you were working your jewelry business to pay your bills, what was happening with the group home? Were you making some money at it? Were you saving it? What was happening there?
Sure. On paper, on the profit and loss sheet, there's a profit. It's numbers at the bottom of the page. That money, it was essential to turn that around and put it back into the business through additional training for employees, to hire new employees, to continue to acquire property in order to continually grow. But it was essential that that money got turned around and put back into the business in order to make it a sustainable business.
If you wouldn't have had that strategy where you had this other income coming for those first years, you knew you were setting this aside to grow this business, reinvest it, do you think you would have quit in those first years?
We certainly wouldn't have grown. Absolutely would not have had the opportunity to grow if we could not have invested back into the business. And not growing doesn't mean simply that we would not have greater income later as business owners. It would also mean there would be fewer jobs that we could provide for the community. It also would mean there would be fewer opportunities for services for the people who need those services. So continuing to reinvest into the business was essential for opportunities for ourselves, essential for opportunity for the employees that we would hire, essential for opportunities for the clients that we serve.